Well, welcome everyone to today's office hours on improving transportation access for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items. And while I'm doing that, if you can introduce yourself in the chat, just so we can see who's joining us today, that would be great. One, all participants are muted. This session is being recorded and the materials will be posted on our website as well as I will email them out to you. Closed captioning is available. If you go down to the bottom of the screen and click the CC button, that feature will be available to you. Also, this session is meant to be interactive. So after the presentation and during the group discussion, if it's possible, please keep your cameras on to add to the interactive nature of this meeting. And again, this meeting is to learn from each other. And so we encourage you to put your experience to chat or by raising your hand and muting yourself during the group discussion. And our agenda for today, we'll have a quick overview. I'll do a quick overview of NADTC, and then we'll hear from our presenter, Jessica Johnson from Bayside Community Network. And then we'll move into our group discussion. And as a background, NADTC is a partnership between USA Aging and Easter Seals, and we are funded by the Federal Transit Administration. Our mission is to promote the availability of accessible transportation options that serve the needs of older adults, people with disabilities, caregivers, and communities. And some of our major objectives are to provide person-centered technical assistance and information to professionals in the field on a wide variety of transportation-related topics. And you can contact us through our toll-free number or email, and that will be displayed on our next slide. We also provide trainings, which would be through our webinars, our office hours. We do presentations at conferences and our free online courses. We also use a wide variety of communication channels, which would be through our website, our social media, and we're on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, our monthly newsletter. If you haven't signed up for that, please do, and our blogs on timely information. And we also invest in community solutions by providing grants to programs looking to develop and implement innovations and new models for increasing the availability of accessible transportation services for older adults and people with disabilities. And here is our information, our number, our email, our website, and our our social media. And now I'll turn things over to Jessica from Bayside Community Network.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Like Heather said, my name is Jessica Johnson. Everybody calls me Jessie, and I work at Bayside Community Network in Cecil County, Maryland, in Elkton. Let's see, you can go to the next slide, Heather. So who we are, and we're Bayside Community Network. Like I said, Bayside. We are a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization. We serve the intellectual and developmentally disabled community in Cecil County, Maryland. We offer residential day community supported living, personal supports, vocational, volunteer, transportation programs to adults with developmental disabilities, typically 21 years age or older, with the exception of our Camp Care. It's a 3-week day camp care experience for children with disabilities in our community. Our partners, Cecil Transit, our local transit agency, we partner with them for transportation for our camp. And to learn more about us, please visit our website. The address is down there at the bottom. It's www.thevalueofcommunity.org. And just so to kind of break it up a little for you, the programs that we offer for residential day community supported living, like I said, those are typically for our 21 and older adults who are transitioning out from the public school system. And then our Camp Care program is for children. I think our youngest that we have had is 5 or 6 years old, but they can attend Camp Care until they are 21 when they transition to adult services. So we can go to the next slide, Heather. Our transportation program, and I'm sure for those of you who also work in the human services field, transportation is easily one of our biggest pieces, right up there with residential. We provide at-door transportation services for individuals enrolled in our programs. Our transportation services are tailored to meet individual needs. So if, for example, your loved one requires a wheelchair lift to get in and out of a vehicle with some physical assistance, we provide that service at door. So we provide transportation for all of our day employment, vocational volunteer, community volunteer. We also provide non-emergency medical appointments, transportation, recreational, and daily living activities. I have to say that our volunteer program is in two different components, vocational and volunteer. Our vocational is geared more towards the individual who wants to work and wants a career. They're just not typically sure what is their passion in life, what do they want to work at. So our vocational volunteer program has partners with all types of organizations, with local businesses, where they can volunteer for a couple of hours and find out what their interest is, what they're good at, what they're not so good at, what they want to pursue as a career. Our community volunteer program is for the individual that, the workplace is just it's not appropriate for them. It's not going to work, but they really like being out in the community and volunteering and contributing. So this offers them the chance to find out what they enjoy doing out in the community, whether it's, we work with our partners at the Cecil County Arts Council, for example, working in their gardens, we also work inside in the gallery. We do janitorial services there, and and they love it. It's a great place to volunteer. We are also an approved Title VI organization, which, for those of you who aren't sure, that in a nutshell just says that our transportation services, we will not discriminate in any shape, way, or form for those individuals seeking transportation from our organization. And let's see, go to the next slide. And I was just telling Heather about this. This photo is one of my favorites. This is the winners. These two gentlemen were the winners of our Awkward Family Photo Contest this year. And quite literally, the gentleman who's sitting on the ground is almost as big as a tree. He's about 7 foot tall. Gentle giant, though. So just wanted to share that. Let's see how we render transportation services. We have a mobility manager, which I will get to that component in the next slide, but our mobility manager, her name is Jeanette Harding. She is responsible for organizing our routes, our driver schedules, maintaining the efficiency of our vehicle fleet. And when I say maintaining the efficiency, I mean our vehicle uses, preventative maintenance, making sure that if, one of our drivers is going out, that we're getting, the most use out of each route to serve the individuals that we care for. Our mobility manager identifies and determines which consumers may be able to utilize other sources of transportation, including Cecil Transit, which is our local transit agency. And for example, Uber. We have a lot of our consumers, and we have approximately 200 individuals here daily. And a lot of those guys could use other modes of transportation. It's finding out the best way to utilize those resources. And a lot of our guys, it's simply just giving them the resources, the tools, and the repetition, and having someone there to kind of help guide them through it until they can get that on their own, and then we can step back. One of the other components of our transportation services is we are currently requesting, especially for our vocational and employment programs, a transportation for employment services contract. And what we have asked our consumers, and we're hoping this might effectively translate into using, say, like Cecil Transit or Uber, is a contract that our consumers sign, understanding that they will that they will respect our drivers, that they'll respect our vehicles, that they'll be ready for work on time, that they will be ready to leave work on time and be present. We're also going to implement that we're going to require, if they're agreeable, of course, we're not going to make anybody, but that we would like to require them to at least try to utilize Cecil Transit's volunteer program, which is a program that Cecil Transit has developed to assist consumers, just like our guys, who just need a little help in navigating the transportation solo and in community. And rendering transportation, we have a lot of considerations that we really have to think about when we're offering these services. If an individual does require, that wheelchair lift, or if they have a walker and they need physical assistance getting on or off of the bus, are they prone to seizures? Are they behavioral? Do they need any sort of other additional assistance when they're using our transportation program? So we really try to, address all of those and make sure that we're serving them to the best of our abilities. One of the other components, which I'm sure everybody has had this, they've changed a lot of the ways that transportation funding and billing is done. And we're in the process of trying to figure out the most effective way to manage this new fiscal billing for our transportation services. And quite frankly, some of our guys that are employed are no longer waiver eligible, but that does not necessarily mean that they are able to either independently use something like Cecil Transit or Uber or a taxi. They still do just need a ride to and from work, and we're able to work with them independently to kind of keep supporting them in that way to make sure they can get to and from work. Let's see, and Heather, if you want to go to the next slide. Now, I did mention our mobility manager. This was a project that was funded through the NADTC. And I am going to tell you right now, we have the second largest vehicle fleet in Cecil County. And our transportation program is busting at the seams. We didn't have one person whose designated responsibility was to manage this fleet. So thankfully, we were able to get this grant award through the NADTC for a mobility manager. And let's see, and like I said, we partnered with our local transit agency, who we have had a long-standing relationship with. Our project goals for this to include more efficient transportation within Bayside that will allow our organization to offer gap-filling NEMT ride services to Cecil Transit customers via direct referral. So what that entails is, like I said, we've had a long-standing relationship with Cecil Transit. They have just been wonderful to us. And one of the things that we have come across in our community, which I'm sure this isn't just in ours, that a lot of the Cecil Transit customers that were able to utilize Cecil Transit, but for example, if you have someone who's just finished kidney dialysis and they can't necessarily get on and off the Cecil Transit bus, it might take them a while, and Cecil Transit drivers are not trained the same way our drivers are. And not only that, they are on a fixed route. They're on a schedule that needs to be kept for, reasons I'm sure we all understand. So one of the things that we ran into was, how can we help each other here? And we're helping our community. So Cecil Transit will identify specific consumers from their services and contact us directly and just ask, hey, is there any way that one of your drivers could pick, so-and-so up from their kidney dialysis and just drop them off at home? It's pretty simple, but it's one of those life-changing things for the person who's getting the dialysis. And because our drivers are so well trained in first aid, seizure management, choking and dysphagia, nursing 101, bloodborne pathogens, the whole list, it gives them peace of mind too. The second part of this project is identifying Bayside consumers that will participate in Cecil Transit travel training program to increase their independence. And the thought being that, again, a lot of our guys, they can absolutely use Cecil Transit. It's just teaching them in the right way to make sure that they understand and how to navigate that service. Let's see, if you want to go to the next slide, Heather. So with that in mind, all of that, right? The COVID factor and other stories. Now, I know I'm not alone in this when I say, COVID definitely threw us for one heck of a loop. And Bayside consumers are among the most vulnerable to COVID-19. They have a lot of chronic underlying conditions. And in vehicles and transportation, we're in some very close quarters. So we had to really rethink how we render our transportation services. And thankfully, the timing of it, having a mobility manager has been a godsend to us, because she jumped in with both feet and really has revamped how we deliver these services so that we can keep that in mind. Our staff shortages, and I am sure across the board, everybody feels this crunch. Staff shortages have affected services. We are short on a good year. We are short in a good month. And that's the nature of working in human services. COVID just really amplified that. And staff shortage has been, one of those big things that I think have affected all of us in that. Budgets and funding for transportation has changed. And by that, I mean the way that the states and the way that we can bill DDA for transportation services, that's changed a lot of how we are able to manage our transportation services. I mean, you can't run a vehicle without gas, right? And limited resources in proportion to the number of disabled individuals who require transportation. And again, I know these are, I'm sure, all things that all of you have experienced, especially, COVID just compounding it. So regularly, these are all things I think that we will find, but COVID just really compounded. And we have found that even with, transportation funding and resources, that we're still limited. And a lot of that is there is a lot more disabled folks that need a ride than we have the money for vehicles and drivers for. And I think, like I said, this is across the board. Let's see, Heather, if you want to go to the next slide. So challenges and barriers. And again, this is just from, Bayside perspective, but I think a lot of this translates across the board for anyone who works in transportation. Transportation needs are greater than current resources. We all know that. Current market for purchasing vehicles and or conversion vehicles is difficult for various reasons. Another thing we all know, I'm sure, the cost of vehicles has skyrocketed. And I know a lot of there's various reasons, supply chain, there's current, demand for it. We don't have, the parts that are needed for for them to be able to finish and sell the vehicle, and especially, for conversion vehicles. So we're having a difficult time, purchasing vehicles with funding that we have been able to secure. And the individual cost or specialized transportation services may be too expensive. And this is a general, I think, that most folks who work in the IDD community can understand. Because, for example, if someone who is released, someone who went in to do 30 days of rehab, let's say they just had a fall, they were admitted to a rehab facility. After 30 days, they're ready to go home. Now, we all know they're not going to physically be able to take, most likely, a Cecil Transit or any of our area taxis or Uber. And even if they could call, they physically need help getting in and into the house and out of the vehicle. And so, and you calling an ambulance, I think we all know that's sometimes what they have to do, but you're going to get a $2,000 ambulance bill for that ride, and it's too expensive. And then even still, using something like, Uber or a taxi, it's a cost that a lot of these guys can't afford. If you're on a fixed income such as SSI or SSDI, you might not be able to afford that expense. And again, something we all know, driver shortages are on an all-time high across the board. We all know that. And public transportation is not always an option for folks with IDD, whether it's, they're just not physically, emotionally comfortable, whether they're behavioral. There could be a whole list of reasons. It just might be that they need that one-on-one transportation to get them where they need to go safely. And go to the next slide, Heather. So where are we now? And if anybody can answer this right now, I'll give you $100. We are still figuring things out. And especially with COVID, I think that, it's been a blessing and a curse in that, when you work in the Bayside has been around for about 50 years. And when I think an agency has been around for as long as what Bayside has, there is that tendency of, well, this is just how we've always done it. And it's comfortable and it's safe. And especially with folks in the IDD community, I think they really are comforted with repetition, and they like schedule and structure, and they know what to expect. Some of the things with COVID, we have flipped it upside down, and especially with transportation. Thankfully, though, we have got some amazing staff, and our guys have understood the best that they could, and they've been along for the ride. So I think, we're still figuring things out, as we all are. So we'll get there. And like I was talking about with our Mobility for All projects, and even to our own organization. So referral process for our local Cecil transit partners is something that we're working on to get more cadence for their ride requests to us, and additional data collection, service perimeters. One of the funny stories I think I love to tell is they will call us and say, "We are so sorry. This is such short notice. We apologize. We have someone that needs a ride in 48 hours." Now, in nonprofit world, when I hear short notice, I'm thinking somebody needs to be picked up in 15 minutes. So that's one of the things that we really appreciate from our friends at Cecil Transit. And I'll tell you, we're still working out the kinks on that. And some things we can't do. So really, it's that communication and good relationship that we've built that I think has really helped this project. And it's really come into its own. I mean, we've got work to do, but who doesn't? The transportation training for Bayside consumers, encouraging independence while observing safety. When is a safe time to start? Are adjustments to the travel training program needed? And I really think that due to COVID, we have not been able to have our guys have our guys really utilize that travel training. We're hoping that that's going to start soon, just because things seem to be calming down, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to get our guys out there soon, because we've got 3 of our consumers who are really excited about this opportunity and ready to go, 2 of which have full-time jobs. Adjustments may need to be needed, but that's why we're going to try it out with these 3, because they are, they're savvy out, they're navigating the world, and I think that they will be successful. But we'll tweak it to the individual. Retention of drivers and staff to meet our current transportation needs. And I know if I've said it once already, I've said it like 20 times, but that is, I think, up there with the funding. We are strapped. I mean, and I think we all are, but we're getting there. You want to go to the next slide, Heather? Oh, and I just want y'all to know, This is our Derby car that was entered into the Cecil County Fair, and we won first place. I just wanted to share. So we're anticipating the success of our Bayside consumers who complete Cecil Transit's travel training program. We expect to increase in the number of these participants and riders. So we're planning to start out with 3, and then we already have, our mobility manager has identified additional, I think she is up to 16 consumers that she thinks she can work with Cecil Transit to help them to utilize. And it also helps that we have a transit stop right out at the end of our drive here. Increasing the availability of gap filling rides to Cecil Transit, because we would like to be able to help them out more and to help our community more. You know, if we have all these vehicles and if we have the staff and the time, I mean, no one should have to worry about how they're going to get home from kidney dialysis or how they're going to get to a doctor's appointment. No one should have to have that worry. So we're hoping that we'll be able to work on, you know, making that a much bigger part of our transportation eventually. We'd like to develop a fine-tuned referral process and procedure, and that is for our gap filling and for our consumers who would ride on Cecil Transit. We'd like to expand to include more of our partner organizations. So, for example, somebody has a Medicaid redetermination at the Department of Social Services, and they don't have a ride, you know, and they're disabled and they need some help. You know, we'd like to be able to help with those appointments eventually if we can get the resources and develop a very fine-tuned process. We'd like to be able to do more like that. And we'd also, you know, in turn, we'd also be partnering with, you know, Department of Social Services, the health department. You know, we'd like to help each other out. And of course, and I think this is a course everybody knows, we'd like to find additional funding sources to support transportation. Who wouldn't? And let's see, I think next slide, I think that's, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to let me know. And next slide has my contact information. So feel free, reach out to me anytime. I love to hear anybody else's ideas or takes, or, you know, what you all are doing to kind of make things work. I am all ears.